This is your Tuesday Daily Delivery. I am Michael Rand. We've got a lot to get to today. If you stayed up late watching the Wild completely waste your time on Monday night, I'm sorry. If you didn't, I'd like to spend a lot of time on today's show talking about everything that went wrong in that game and talking about everything that has gone wrong for this franchise and really for Minnesota teams in the playoffs. Sorry, this is not going to be a pleasant show because that was not a pleasant game to watch. They lost 4-0 to the Blues. I don't care how well they did 5-on-5. I don't care what the possession told you. They lost 4-0 on their home ice in the playoff opener in a year that is supposed to be different. So not going to be much sugarcoating on that one as we get into it. We will talk Twins here towards the end of the show as well because they deserve our attention. Won again, 2-1 over Baltimore. Rocco Baldelli happy with a lot of the pitching effort in that game. Good start from Chris Paddock. And Joan Duran gets the save in that game. He's been terrific out of the bullpen, so we'll get into a little bit of that as well. And talk a little bit of Kentucky Derby because we're getting down to it here. That's this weekend, and two Minnesota horses, one in particular, are going to factor into that in a big way. Rachel Blount actually will be joining me later this week. She's been down in Kentucky spending some time there getting ready for that race, so should have a great report from her coming up later this week. But first, what did I miss? Like I said at the jump, Wild loses 4-0 to St. Louis. And, just looking at Twitter during the game, watching this performance, and again, let's preface everything just by saying it is only one game. I understand it's a best-of-7 series. You can say Wild beat Vegas in Game 1 last year. In fact, I think Marcus Foligno did say that. I might play that clip later, and then end up losing the series, right? Timberwolves, if we're going to draw on recent Minnesota sports history, beat Memphis on the road in Game 1, ended up losing that series in 6 games. So it's a long series. St. Louis still has to win 3 more games against the Wild in order for this thing to be over before anybody wanted it to. That said, when you lose 4-0, when it's not really even close. And again, like I said, I know the possession was fairly equal. I know that 5-on-5, the Wild played the game they wanted to play. I know, and I don't care because it just felt like it was a repeat of everything we have ever seen from this team in the playoffs. I was thinking actually, covered the Gophers men's hockey team for the Minnesota Daily long time ago. We're talking like a quarter of a century ago, and that's upsetting. To say that's upsetting that it was that long ago, but it was like legitimately a quarter of a century ago, covering a series between the Gophers and North Dakota up in North Dakota. This is the old Ralph, not the new Ralph, the old Ralph. The beautiful palace that is built now does not hold a candle to the old Ralph, which was just the greatest hockey building in the world. It's up there covering that series. And the Gophers, I can't remember if it was Friday or Saturday, but they lost both of the games. I think they gave up 6 goals in both the games. They just got their doors blown off. And this was a good Gophers team. This is a team that went to the NCAA tournament, won an NCAA tournament game, but North Dakota just had their number that year, and they had just been killing the Gophers whenever they came up to play. And we're doing post-game interviews, and it's, I don't think it's in the locker room. I think it was like in a hallway outside the locker room down there. And I'm talking to Gophers goalie Steve DeBus. And, we're a quarter of a century later, and I did publish this at the time, or I think later on, but we did publish this full quote. I'm not going to say the full quote because this is a family podcast, but he was clearly frustrated with everything that had happened in that game, in that series, in his entire career against North Dakota. And I'm doing a one-on-one with him, just kind of off to the side, and I'm asking him, how frustrating is it when you kind of do the same thing and you guys get the same results? You keep losing, to this team, to this big rival of yours. And, he's talking about it. You can see the frustration building, and all of a sudden he's just, unleashes a string of profanities about how it's the same thing every week, every time they play, every weekend. They're just getting, he's getting hung out to dry and things like that. Added a few choice swear words in with it because he was just that frustrated. Every other reporter who was there came swarming over when they overheard him saying that, because that's not a moment you get that often in a locker room in an interview setting. So anyway, long story short, I have to imagine that's how the Wild and their fans feel right now. It's the same thing over and over and over again. And the frustrating thing is that this year's team is different, and the playoff outcome is supposed to be different. This is a team that has plenty of balance in their offense, so that you look at it and say, you've got the last line change, you can dictate all the matchups you want, you should be able to get players out there and get goals. They got 0 on Monday, 0 in the playoff opener. I think ESPN flashed a stat. I was watching the national broadcast for a while, flashed a stat at the start of the third period that the Wild had not been shut out in the first 2 periods at home all season long. This is the first time they had not scored a goal in the first 2 periods of a home game all season long. Well, they took it one step further, did not score a goal for the entire game. Guys, this is a team, like I said, that has had these playoff nightmares. Do you realize they are now 30-55 all time in the playoffs? And to some degree, that shouldn't matter, right? This is a brand new team, brand new identity. Like I said, they've got a star player in Kirill Kaprizov. They've got scoring up and down the line. Kevin Fiala, Ryan Hartman, Marcus Foligno, Matt Zuccarello, Joel Eriksson-Ek, Jordan Greenway, all this offensive firepower, Matt Boldy, all these defensive players who are capable on the blue line. 2 very good goaltenders who are both veterans. We'll get into the decision to start Marc-Andre Fleury over Cam Talbot here in a minute as well, but I don't think that was anywhere near the deciding factor in this game. I thought Fleury was okay. The Wild was not okay on balance because they took some undisciplined penalties. And again, knowing going into this game how important staying out of the penalty box would be, and then giving up 6 power plays to St. Louis. And, maybe some of them are suspect calls. I'm not going to get into the officiating. Everyone's going to whine about that. Both teams had 6 power plays. If you don't like the calls, if you don't like the officiating, what you can ask for is it at least even? Yeah, 6 power plays for each team. Guess what? St. Louis scored on 2 of them, had a third that was just after the penalty expired. So basically 3 of their 4 goals coming as a result of the power play. Wild went 0 for 6 on the power play. That right there is the bona fide, clear-cut difference in the game. No doubt about it. And not a surprise, right? You knew going in that you couldn't be undisciplined against this team because the penalty kill and the power play was probably the biggest difference between these 2 teams coming in. Wild coming in with the 18th ranked power play in the league, St. Louis number 2. Wild coming with the 25th ranked penalty kill, St. Louis number 5. All year long, the Wild has been maybe the best team in the NHL or up there 5-on-5. So you want to stay out of the penalty box as best you can. Don't take those cheap after the whistle calls. Don't get engaged in those kind of chippy little moments, because that even if you're trying to change momentum in some way, if you wind up in the box, you are putting your team at a severe disadvantage. Let's hear a little bit about that right now from Wild head coach Dean Evason after the game.
100%. That's exactly what happened. Obviously, we have to stay out of the box regardless of what we think of penalties. They're the same on both sides, and we've got to play between the whistles and forget about the crap. We don't need to do that. And it's happened to us, and I don't like to say they're not undisciplined penalties. They're penalties that are avoidable penalties. So yeah, and 5-on-5, you can say what you want about special teams. Our power play had some unbelievable chances. Their goalie played great. Ours played great. They got a couple of bounces on their PP, but it can't be a 6-6 game, or we're not going to have success.
Take a playcation to Mystic Lake for 24/7 gaming, fun restaurants and bars, and luxurious hotel rooms. And join Club M to bask in the rewards. Follow the lights to Mystic Lake, where every day is play day.
Now, David Perron had both of those power play goals for the Blues and had the third one that came right after time expired. He is a wild killer. He has been a wild killer for a long time. But you know what? St. Louis has a great power play. He is a big part of that great power play. And so they can't talk about this like it's some sort of magic or just bad breaks that the puck just seems to find him or something like that, because that's the way St. Louis's power play operates. They kind of, they like to move people side to side, like to create those kind of lanes, those alleys, create rebounds, create havoc. And that's what they do, and that's what they did. So that's why you have to stay out of the penalty box, which the Wild did not do in that game. Let's hear a little bit now from goalie Marc-Andre Fleury, kind of talking about how good St. Louis is on the power play, Perron, and just what he does, what they do in order to wreak havoc on teams.
Yeah, I don't know. He's obviously, like you said, we know each other very well, and he's a good shooter. He's always a threat around the net, and it seems like every puck on the power play just end up on his tape, on the back door there. He's a good player, you put him in. Yeah, they're not a team that shoot a lot of pucks, sometimes they have a clear lane with me and them, right, and they're still waiting to make that extra pass across the crease, and I think that's what makes them good, especially on the power play, right? They can do those passes and get you moving side to side, get our PK moving, and they create a little chaos that way.
Again, Fleury got the game one nod, made a save on a penalty shot early in the game after a Jonas Brodin hooking call on a breakaway. That could have been a huge momentum moment in the game. Instead, St. Louis still managed to carry a 2-0 lead into the second period. 2-0 lead after one, 3-0 after two, 4-0 after three. Just a clear domination throughout. Now, the big decision coming into the game was, would the Wild go with Cam Talbot, the guy who's been pretty steady for them the last 2 years, the guy who played in the playoffs for them a season ago and, played relatively well, I think, against Vegas and has been pretty good down the stretch of this season? Or would they go with Fleury, who's got all the postseason experience, who's won 3 Stanley Cups, and who played well in his final tune-up and who played well since being acquired by the Wild at the trade deadline? I don't think either option was going to be a bad one, but it was kind of an interesting decision the Wild had to make, just because when you have 2 good goalies, when you have 2 guys you trust, you do open yourself up to second guessing whenever the other one doesn't play, when one goalie doesn't play maybe as well as he could. And I think Fleury played reasonably well, but he gave up some pretty juicy rebounds, and that was a lot of what St. Louis was scoring on those power plays. So as many good saves as he made, and as much as he wasn't the reason they lost, that is an interesting kind of subplot as we think about Game 2. Do they go back to Fleury again, or do they switch it up? If you switch it up, does it seem like you're panicking? Does it seem like you're, does Dean Evason look like he's grasping a little bit, or does it just look like, well, we tried this guy, maybe he wasn't as sharp as we wanted him to, now we're going to play Cam Talbot, who we know we can trust as well? I don't know. That's going to be an interesting Game 2 decision. What I do know is this. The Wild grinded and grinded and grinded in the second half of the season when they were basically playing every other night, a little bit more than every other night. It's like 41 games in 81 days or something like that. They grinded and grinded and grinded down the stretch to get home ice in this playoff series, thinking it was going to be kind of the X factor, the deciding factor. X factor, no pun intended, with XL Energy Center. So they pushed and pushed and pushed to get that, and it's gone after 60 minutes. Was that worth it? Was it worth it to push that hard? Could they have pulled back a little bit and made sure guys were rested, mentally ready? Sometimes when a team has to grind that hard just to get into the position it wants, there can be a little bit of a letdown in the playoffs. And I know they had a couple days off before the playoffs started, but I don't know. It seemed to me not like they were rusty, not like they lacked energy, but just that maybe the wear and tear of the season caught up with them a little bit. I don't know. I'm not trying to make excuses for them. St. Louis kind of did the same thing until they lost a couple of games down the stretch. Just wondering if that was worth it. Also wondering, just big picture, St. Louis just has their number. St. Louis has beaten them, just beaten them silly over the last few years. Beat them up this year. Just has a advantage in terms of this matchup that can't be overstated. When one team has been so dominant against another team, you start to wonder it's not just luck, it's not just circumstance. I mean, the numbers are just staggering. The Blues have beaten the Wild all 4 games this season, so they're 4-0 against the Wild this year, 13-1-1 in their last 15 games against the Wild. And I know, look, this is a different Wild team than in, a couple of recent years. I get it. A lot of the same players, but definitely a different identity. This, like I said at the jump, this is supposed to be a different Wild team, and that is part of what makes this playoff outcome so disappointing. That's what makes this, so hard to swallow if you are a Wild fan, because you're thinking going into this, okay, this is finally the year. This is the year that they can make a deep playoff run. This is the year that they can do something different. This is the year that the result is going to be different. Who cares if they're playing a team that's got their number? Who cares if this is a bad matchup? Don't worry about that, because this is a team that can get things done when the chips are down, whatever cliche you want to use. And instead in Game 1, it is the same thing again. It's the same, kind of feels like that series against St. Louis 4 or 5 years ago where Jake Allen just could not be topped, could not be stopped in goal, and the Wild just were shooting pucks right into his chest. Not like that was everything that was happening in that opener Monday, but it sure felt that way. Couple other things before we stop talking about the Wild here for a little bit. Jared Spurgeon, late in that game, delivered a really ugly cheap shot, hitting a St. Louis player after the game on the back of his legs with a vicious cross-check. Seeing that NHL Discipline is taking a look at that, would not be surprised if Spurgeon finds out sometime Tuesday that he will not be playing in Game 2, maybe even more than that for that hit after the whistle. I don't know. Maybe it's just a fine. I don't know. I don't know how the league will look at that, because that is not the kind of play that Jared Spurgeon typically makes. The captain on this team, clearly frustrated by what was going on in that game, clearly frustrated by what he's seen against St. Louis over the last 3-4 seasons. But that is the kind of thing you just cannot do. You cannot have that kind of cheap shot. You cannot make that play in that game. That's not the kind of play that's going to wake up your team. That's not the kind of play that's going to get things kick-started for you. That is, that's an undisciplined, uncharacteristic penalty for him. So we will see. Will he be able to play Game 2? If he can't, that's a big blow for them, because obviously one of their top defensemen, one of their best players over the years, if he's out, then you add a whole nother mountain of problems to Game 2. But nothing's going to change in Game 2 if they can't stay out of the penalty box, if they can't fix whatever's going on with those 5-on-4 situations, because the Wild, as many good looks as they got in the power play, I don't care how many good looks they got. They just weren't. They didn't cash them in. They didn't score on them. This is not the time of the year where we talk about chances, out-chancing somebody, puck luck, hockey gods, things like that. The better team most nights is going to win, and the better team on Monday night was clearly St. Louis. So what does the Wild do about it in Game 2? That's the big question. Marcus Foligno had, kind of a stay the course message, and I get it. I get that that's what they have to say. Here's Marcus Foligno, another one of the Wild leaders after the game.
It's going to be a long series. I mean, we know how to play these guys, and we won Game 1 in Vegas last year, and it didn't shape out well for us. So it means nothing. You got to forget about it. You got to go right back at it. We're at home ice again in 2 days, and fans were great tonight. We had a lot of energy. We liked our game for most part of the game, and we just got to understand that it's there's really not much pressure. We know we can beat this team, and to get a split going back to St. Louis is the goal now. So that's the message. Just stay with it and be positive like we've been all year.
And yes, it's absolutely true. This has been a resilient team all season. They've had a lot of comeback victories. They've managed to pull themselves out of tailspins during the year and get hot again, things like that. So they are saying all the right things now for the right reasons. The series is not anywhere near over, but now Game 2 takes on has massive implications. You cannot go down 2-0 on your home ice and go to St. Louis against a team that's had your number all these years. You just can't do that. So now the onus is on them. When there is all that pressure, how will they respond to it? What will they do in that moment? Will those sticks get kind of tight, or will this be a different team? That's when we're really going to find out if this team is different or if it's really, really, really more of the same. Is it Game 2 on Wednesday? Another 8:30, 8:45 p.m. puck drop for that one. And that's where we're going to find out. Is this a different team, or is this the same old thing like Steve DeBus said a quarter of a century ago? Let's move on to something happier here towards the end of the show. Twins, like I said at the jump, won again, 10th win in 11 games. I think I talked over the weekend that I was concerned that the Twins had feasted on the AL Central, but then they lost that Friday game to Tampa Bay. I was like, okay, here we go, because now they're playing teams outside the AL Central. And then guess what happened after that bonus episode of Daily Delivery? Yeah, they won Saturday against Tampa, they won Sunday against Tampa, and then they won Monday against Baltimore, all three teams in the American League East. Now, Baltimore, not a great team this season. Tampa, though, a very good team. Twins coming off a very good series against Tampa after winning the last two games of that. And you do wonder at that point, is there going to be a little bit of a letdown? Are they going to take their foot off the gas? Again, whatever cliche you want to use. And while they didn't get a ton of offense, they get a 2-1 win on Monday. Chris Paddock, very good for them. That's the pitcher they got in the Taylor Rogers trade at the start, right before the start of the season. And the big pitching story, Jhon Duran getting his first major league save, a 1-2-3 ninth inning. First time he's gotten a save, obviously. First time he's even pitched a ninth inning for this team. And again, different situations call for different things, but that was impressive to see just the stuff he's throwing, what he's got out there right now. Rocco Baldelli, Twins manager, has been pushing a lot of the right buttons lately, deserves a lot of credit for not panicking when this team was 4-8. I was panicking. If I was the manager of this team, I probably would have been ranting and raving. Doesn't seem like Rocco was. I think they've had this belief that they're a good team since the start of the year. I didn't know if it was warranted, but when they started 4-8, but now they are 14-9 after this 10-1 stretch. Here is Rocco, by the way, after the game, just talking about how much he liked this game start to finish.
Yeah, I was very impressed with the consistency of the quality efforts that we got from all of our arms, but also the guys playing behind them defensively, and also Ryan behind the plate. CP was great. He gave us a great start. We sent him out there for another inning, kind of pushed him a little bit in a tight ball game. But it's a really good win. I mean, this is like a really nice win where we're coming off of a big series where we played well down in Tampa. And, right off the plane, we come in here, there's, zero letdown. Our guys are locked in, intense, and, it's a different kind of ball game than some of the other ball games we've played in the last few days and even recently. But overall, it was just a very well put together game.
Now, does this mean Duran is the closer going forward? Not at all. That's not how the Twins operate. That's not how they've worked with this current regime, the front office regime. With Rocco as manager, it's all situational. It's all kind of depends on how things line up. But man, it sure does make you feel better, doesn't it? When you've got a guy on the back end who has that kind of stuff, that can throw 100 miles an hour, that's got the breaking stuff to go with it. I don't know where his future is. I don't know where Duran's future is ultimately, whether it's in the back end of that, throwing key innings, getting those key outs late, or if it's in the starting rotation when he could be just as dominant there. That's going to be a good question going forward. But right now, he is so good out of that bullpen, giving them such an option late in games whenever they need him to deploy. That's got to be a good feeling for Rocco Baldelli. And again, here is Rocco talking about Jean Duran and how he was using him in this game.
We've mixed him into some different spots. Every game we play is different. Every set of situations is different. There were a few reasons why he pitched the ninth today. It wasn't just because we wanted him to throw the ninth inning. Some of the matchups maybe, but he's throwing well against everyone that he's facing. So that's not really the biggest part of it. He did throw 2 innings 2 days ago, and we didn't want to get him hot in the inning before, not bring him in, sit him down, kind of cools off a little bit, get him back. We wanted to just give him an inning and let him go to work. But he did a great job again.
And oh, by the way, Tuesday, guess what? Joe Ryan pitching. He of the minuscule, almost 1 ERA. He will go for the Twins against Baltimore. The starting pitching has been unbelievable so far this season. Twins starters now with a 2.58 ERA. That is second best in the major leagues behind the Dodgers, best in the American League. And if you want to find another American League Central team, you have to go all the way down to number 17, the White Sox, at 3.73 for their starters ERA. So the Twins starters have a starters ERA of more than a full run better than the next team in the division. That is a shock to me based on what we thought of this rotation going into the season. Again, we're still early in this year. We're 23 games into the season, but we keep saying it's early, but it keeps getting a little bit later. We're into May now. Maybe this starting rotation is just better than we thought it was. They're not going to end the year with a 2.58 ERA, but if they can end the year with the starters ERA below 4, that will be a pretty big deal for a team that had all sorts of problems in the rotation last season, that looked like they were going to have all sorts of problems in the rotation this year. So we'll see if that continues with Joe Ryan on Tuesday for the Twins. Let's finish with the cooler. 2 Minnesota horses in the Kentucky Derby this Saturday, including Zandon, who drew the number 10 post, considered to be one of the most desirable spots in the race, and has been installed as the favorite 3-1 for Saturday's race. Just an amazing story that that Minnesota has 2 horses, including Zozas, in the race as well. But Zandon drew post number 10. Reading from Rachel Blount's story, she is down in Kentucky and parts nearby, helping cover the lead up to it, and will certainly be there for Saturday's race. She is going to be on Friday's show, I believe, getting you all set up for this race. I mean, I'm not really a big horse racing guy. I'm not really a big Kentucky Derby guy. Normally, I will watch it. I don't really get into it all that much. But when you tell me there's 2 Minnesota horses in there, including the favorite from St. Cloud, that all of a sudden I am interested in that. So that will get me to watch even more. That will get me to pay attention during the week even more. This blind draw on Monday is just some good luck for this Minnesota horse. It doesn't mean that anything's guaranteed, obviously, on Saturday, but it gives them a favorable post position, gives them 3-1 odds going into this race. So that will be something to see on Saturday. Can a Minnesota horse win horse racing's most prestigious race? That will do it for me today. Like I said, lots of other good stuff coming up in the week. Rachel Blount will be on Friday's show, expecting to have Minnesota United goalkeeper Dane St. Clair on the show later this week as well. The Loons battling in playoff position, just had a tough loss to LAFC, best team in the conference. Lost that game late Sunday night. It was a 2-0 result after it was 0-0 for much of that game. I'll hear from Dane St. Clair, get in depth on his excellent season, and more to come on that. So enjoy that later this week. Thanks for joining me here on Daily Delivery today. I'm Michael Rand, back at it again on Wednesday.